that men and women being submitted to the same regimen will mean, among other things, that they will compete with one another in co-educational gymnasia. They will compete with each other in the nude, because that is the way Greeks exercised. They will compete naked in co-educational gymnasia. Think of that. Furthermore, their marriages and their procreations will be, he tells us, for the sake of the city. There is nothing like romantic love among the members of the guardian class. Sexual relations will be intended purely for the sake of reproduction, and unwanted fetuses will be aborted. The only exception to this prohibition is for members of the guardian class who are beyond the age of reproduction, he tells us. And they, he says, can have sex, if they're still able, with anyone they like, a kind of version of recreational sex as a reward for a lifetime of self-control. Childbearing may be inevitable for women, but the rearing of the child will be the responsibility of the community, or at least a class of guardians in common daycare centers, a sort of variation of Hillary Clinton's book that it takes a village to raise a child. Comes right out of Plato, apparently. No child should know their biological parents, and no parent should know their child. The purpose of this scheme being to eliminate senses of mine and me, to promote a kind of common sense of esprit de corps among the members of the guardian class, a community of pleasure and pain. Socrates calls it at 464a. What we are creating is a community of pleasure and pain. I will feel your pains, and of course you will feel mine. The objections to Socrates are of course, raised as early as by Aristotle himself in the very next generation. How can we care for things? How can we truly care for things that are common? We learn to care for things that are closest to us, that are in some way our own. We can only show proper love and concern for things that are ours, not things that are common. Common ownership, Aristotle argues, will mean a sort of common neglect. Children will not be raised better by putting them under the common care of guardians, of guardians or in daycares, but they will be equally neglected. But it is in this, and you can think about that, but whether that's true or not, but it is in the same context of his treatment of men and women that something else often goes unnoticed, and that is Socrates' efforts to rewrite the laws of war. Because, of course, the guardians are being trained and educated to be guards, to be warriors, to be members of a military class. In the first place, he tells us children must be taught the art of war. This must be the beginning of their education, Socrates says, making the children spectators of war. Children will be taken, he seems to suggest, to battles and to sites of where fighting is going on, to be spectators, for them to become used to and habituated to seeing war and everything that goes on. Not only is expulsion from the ranks of the guardians a penalty for cowardice, but Socrates suggests there should be, listen to this, erotic rewards for those who excel in bravery. Erotic rewards for excellence in bravery. Consider the following remarkable proposal at 468c. And I add to the laws of war, Socrates writes, that as long as they, the guardians, are on campaign, no one whom he wants to kiss should be permitted to refuse. so that if a man happens to love someone, either male or female, he would be more eager to win the rewards of valor. That is to say, as a reward for bravery, exhibited bravery, the hero should be allowed to kiss anyone they like while they are on patrol, male or female. A particularly puritanical editor of Plato from the 20th century writes in a footnote to that passage, "This is almost the only passage in Plato that one would wish to blot out." His sensibilities were offended by this notion. But I wonder if this might even make a powerful incentive for military recruitment today. What do you think? Well, think about it. I don't know. So, at long last, we move from the education of the guards to justice. What is justice? We've been asking ourselves throughout this book, and which Socrates has been teasing us with. At long last, we come to this thing. The Platonic idea of justice concerns harmony, he tells us, both harmony in the city and harmony in the soul. We learn that the two are actually homologous in some way. Justice is defined as what binds the city together and makes it one. Or he puts it another way, it consists of everyone and everything performing those functions for which they are best equipped. Each of the other citizens, Socrates says, must be brought to that which naturally suits him, One man, one job, he says, so that each man practicing his own, which is one, will not become many, but one. Thus, you see, he says, the whole city will naturally grow up together. Justice seems to mean adhering to the principle, at least justice in the city, adhering to the principle of division of labor. One man, one job. Everyone doing or performing the task that naturally fits or suits them. One can, of course, as you've already imagined, raise several objections to this view. And again, Aristotle seems to take the lead. Plato's excessive emphasis on unity would seem to destroy the natural diversity of human beings that make up a city. Is there one and only one thing that each person does best? And if so, who could decide this? Will such a plan of justice not be overly coercive in forcing people into predefined social roles? Shouldn't individuals be free to choose for themselves their own plans of life wherever it may take them? But however that may be, Plato believes he has found in the formula of one man, one job, a certain foundation for political justice. That is to say, the three parts of the cities, workers, auxiliaries, guardians, each of them all work together, and each by minding their own business, that is, doing their own job, out of this, a certain kind of peace and harmony will prevail. And since the city, you remember, is simply the soul writ large, the three classes of the city merely express the three parts of the soul. The soul is just, he tells us, when the appetites, spiritedness, and reason cooperate with reason ruling spirit and appetite, just as in the polis, the philosopher king rules the warriors and the workers. The result, he tells us, is a kind of balance of the parts of the whole, right? Justice is a kind of harmony in which the three parts of the city and the three parts of the soul are direct expressions of one another. But that formula forces us to return to the original Socratic question about the harmony of the soul and the city. Is the structure of a city identical to the structure of a soul? Are they really identical? Well, maybe, maybe not. For example, every individual consists of three parts, of appetite, spirit, and reason. Yet each of us will be confined, it seems, to only one task in the social hierarchy. I assume what Socrates means by that is though each individual will, each of us, embody all three features of soul, appetite, spirit, and reason, only one of these will be the dominant trait in each of us. Some of us will be dominantly appetitive personalities. Others will be dominantly spirited, and so on. But even still, when we think of it, if I am a member of the money-making class, I am still more than simply a bundle of desires and appetites, just as a member of the warrior class would be clearly more than mere thumos, or mere spiritedness. So to confine the individual, it seems, to one and only one sphere of life would seem to do an injustice to the internal psychological complexity that makes each of us who we are. Let's examine that problem from a slightly different point of view. Socrates tells us repeatedly that justice in the city consists of each member, each citizen, fulfilling his task in the social division of labor, in the social hierarchy. But this seems to be a very far cry, does it not, from the kind of justice he talks about in the soul that consists in what we might think of as a sort of rational autonomy or self-control, where reason controls the passions and the appetites. In fact, the vast majority of citizens in even the platonically just city will not necessarily have platonically just souls. The harmony and self-discipline of the city will not be due, it seems, to